Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Indy 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. This week's guest is the current assistant coach at St. John's University, one of the most prestigious and biggest programs in college soccer at the NCAA Division I level in the United States. I'm so happy that I was able to have Coach Ciano on the podcast today. We go way back as we've known each other for a couple of years now, and have kind of crossed paths a couple of different times in the coaching world, and also when I was a college player as well. So it's great to catch up with him, great to hear his story, and great to hear how his coaching career has panned out, and really the life and the inspiration, I would say, that he's brought to every program that he has been at. Before I get you over to the Coach Ciano interview, let me just ask you a quick favor. If you are listening right now on Spotify or Apple, wherever you may be listening, I appreciate you. You're probably one of the OGs because, as you know, this podcast started solely on audio, and we didn't get video until a little bit later on down the road. And so I appreciate you. I want to ask you a big favor. Pause the episode just for a second. Come right back. Open up YouTube and hit the subscribe button. We've been making a big push the past couple months here with lots of new content and trying to drive viewership on the YouTube as well to the video episodes. So I'd greatly appreciate if you did me that big favor. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you've done hopefully the full job, and you've also hit that subscribe button while you're watching this episode. I would appreciate if you did that as well. If you're just watching it and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you go ahead and do that. And if you are already a subscriber, well, I don't know what to tell you. You've done the job already. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You are helping the channel grow. You're helping the show grow more than you could possibly know. And it's never lost on me how important that is to me and how much I am appreciative of all of you out there. Welcome back to those of you who just went and subscribed on the YouTube. I appreciate it. And without further ado, here is myself, Coach Ciano. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now and stepping into the 11 is Coach John Ciano, current assistant coach for the St. John's men's program. And Coach, first of all, like I said, just before we jumped on, thank you so much for taking some time to share your story with us. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about your career and just kind of college soccer as a whole. So I can't thank you enough. I appreciate it.
No, and thank you again for having me on, Brendan. Again, this is a great podcast. Again, we've known each other for a while. I've been following the show, and you give a great platform to, again, players from all over the world, men and women, to explain their journey. So thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's definitely been a long time coming because we've known each other for a couple of years now. So happy to have made it happen here.
I appreciate it. I'm humbled.
But as I said there, so assistant at St. John's right now, and this is kind of the exciting time, I know, for a lot of college coaches because it's still, right maybe on that cusp of when guys are just starting to go to classes. You're still kind of in that initial buzz of the season where everything is potential, right? And maybe something that injury hasn't happened yet, or maybe that one thing that's kind of going to throw a wrench into the team's success hasn't quite happened yet. How do you look at the season so far? I know you said you've had a couple matches so far, but what's that potential kind of look like for the current program?
Yeah, we're very bullish on the group. We're very high. I think we have a very talented group with a lot of potential. Again, this is my first season, so I just started at St. John's in May. So it's been a new experience, just getting to know the guys and getting to see how things operate. And I've been very impressed with the group in terms of their maturity, their talent, their camaraderie. We brought in a big class, so a lot of new pieces that we've had to get gelling on the same page pretty quickly. But we've been pretty good so far with the results. We had an undefeated preseason with some pretty good teams. And then had a good start, some good results. We were coming off our first loss at national ranked Penn State. But it was a good game, and we'll be back at home on Friday against St. Peter's. So I think we're very excited about it. But as you know, as a former college player, a lot goes into having a successful season, and we just got to stay healthy. We got to keep pushing in the right direction, and have the ball bounce the right way sometimes. So, but
Yeah.
we're having fun.
Yeah, you just mentioned there, like you said, a lot has to go in your direction in a college season. Is there anything that you can really, I'm sure you can speak to this much better than me, elaborate on when it comes to that? Because I think there's a different element to a college season than many other professional seasons, or even at the youth level club seasons, right, where you have this much longer window of time where you're with the group. Um, on a college soccer season, it feels like it's over in a blink of the eye, right? Because you start in August, then all of a sudden, fast forward to November, and you're looking at some of the last games of your season. Is there anything that you can really attest to that has to kind of bounce your way when it comes to a successful college season?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very unique, as you said, because it's almost a sprint and a marathon in the same breath, right? So you got to
Yeah,
have a long term mindset and play the long game in a lot of ways, with making sure that you keep the group pulling in the right direction in terms of the chemistry, the camaraderie, getting guys to be bought into again, a certain vision. Obviously, our program at St. John's is pretty storied. It's got a lot of tradition. Again, it's a very strong weight that guys carry, so they need to understand the expectations that go with that. But then you're also managing things from game to game, and very unique compared to soccer across the world. We generally will play 2 games per week. So you have 3 days. Our periodization model, our loading is a little bit different. So you have to manage some of those things too, with regards to fatigue, with regards to inconsistencies, with regards to injuries. And on top of it too, I always joke around. It's almost the most unpredictable age bracket that you can manage compared to
yeah,
maybe young teenagers, right? So you have
yeah,
guys that, again, they're, like you said, they're going to class right now. What's going on at home in terms of their family situations, so there's a lot of inconsistencies with that too. So as I kind of said before, it's a sprint because it's, like I said, it's over like that, but it can be very long. And the beautiful part about it too is sometimes seeing the maturation of a player from day one of preseason, where maybe they don't have as prominent a role, or they're growing, or they're figuring things out, and then by the one of the last games regular season, or hopefully in postseason, they're becoming a big part of your program. That happens a lot too. So
yeah.
there's a lot of things that go into it: man management, tactics, but yeah, it comes fast and furious. So it's about being even keeled, and keeping your preparation nice and sharp, and again, having a good mindset, which is important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. When I also in my time as on the sidelines for college coaching, it was, I know, a joke that kind of I would hear from time to time from different coaches, and it's like, do you ever think it's kind of crazy that, because for certain programs, right, the athletic directors have a mindset of, hey, we want you to come in and win, right? That sometimes is a standard that's set, and there may be certain expectations of, if there's not winning, then we're going to go a different direction. And so it's funny to just hear coaches talk about the fact that, like, you ever think about how our careers, like our livelihoods, sometimes come down to with the decisions of 17, 18, 19 year olds. And it's a bit crazy to think about that, but that's kind of the reality across college sports, right? Like, it's these young kids kind of making these big decisions, and a lot of what they do and how they perform also kind of affects what you do and your career longevity, maybe at a certain program. Is that ever a bit
Yeah.
stressful?
No, you know what? It's funny. Because it's so true. We have such a unique profession that
Hmm.
sometimes it's difficult to relate or explain to people outside of it.
Yeah,
I always tell people, like, it's unfair because we, as a career, or our job, is only really judged for 3 months of the year. Which, again, if you said someone else there, they'd be like, "Oh, what does that even mean? That's a little crazy." But it's true, right? Unfairly, someone logs onto your website and they see, oh, you went 3-12 and you finished in, dead last in your conference. Oh, that guy must not be a good coach. Whereas you
yeah,
never know, right? Did he just take over the program? Did he have 10 injuries? Was there an issue? Like, you don't know. So as I've gotten older, I've tried to really appreciate that there's so many other different parts of the job. I've really tried to appreciate the off season. I try and appreciate the summer, the spring. It's
Hmm.
definitely still a 24/7, 365-day job, but you can find beauty in any part of it. But it is true. So, again, I think part of it too is making sure you have a good culture and you have good standards and values that are ingrained, because I think that helps out with regards to getting that unpredictable age bracket in line with making sure that they are, again, all pulling the same direction, which is important.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely hit on something important there that while you may be judged just by that 3 month window, it definitely is not a job where you ever feel like you can really punch out, during the season. It's not like that 3 months is once it ends, then it's all of a sudden, oh, okay, I can kind of take a breath here for a second because nope, it's right back into the recruiting grind and then the camp grind in the summer, and it's just it's a cycle that always repeats. Which again,
Correct.
maybe another kind of misconception of what people think from the outside looking at, not only college soccer coaches, but really just college coaches across the gamut, right, for all these different sports. Um,
Absolutely. You wear so many different hats, right? So I always joke around. I'm not just a coach, but I'm a admissions counselor. I'm a budget specialist. I'm a travel agent. I'm a doctor, a psychologist. All these different pieces that go into it. That is a unique part of our job, right? And I know sometimes people say, "Oh, well, it's fine. Don't you just roll the ball out and let the kids play or whatever?" And it's like, yeah, that's the fun part about it, is the coaching piece, but there's just so many different administrative roles and duties and aspects. You become a father to these guys, year round, that a lot of people don't understand, and it is what makes our job so unique, as you said earlier. So.
Yeah. Is that something that kind of has drawn you into the college coaching side? Because, for example, James Beeston, a mutual connection of ours who I have worked with before on, what he does with supplemental training. I know for a while he was also at the college level, and that was something that he kind of spoke about that kind of um, I guess drove him, I would say, to kind of taking a different route was that there was a lot of things he felt like that were he just wanted to be on the field and with the guys and with the ball at his feet, right? And actually on the ground coaching. And he was like, oh, there's so much time that I was in the office and I was, planning travel and I was doing this, that, and the other. And like, I would look around and be like, when am I actually going to get out in the field? Is that something though, that kind of that maybe all encompassing role that is taken on by a college coach? Is that something that kind of attracted you to the role more?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the beautiful part about coaching, and especially in our sport, is there's so many different avenues to do it where you can impact the lives of young people. If I were to think about my why, I love to be a servant leader and I love to help. And coaching and teaching through the game of soccer allows me that platform. And I think, especially in the college game, you're impacting these young people at such a vulnerable time in their life. I always tell people, you go to college, obviously, hopefully to get a good education, to get a diploma, to have a good experience, both on and off the field, but you do it to grow into the person, hopefully, you become for the rest of your life through the experiences you have on a daily basis. And for me to hopefully be a big impact in that, I take with the utmost responsibility, and to me, it's an honor, and I love doing that part. I think we do it whether it's again supplemental training, youth training, hopefully even at the pro level, you're doing it for the people you coach, the kids, the grown men. But I think the college part, you get to be something that's bigger than yourself, which is pretty cool and special.
Yeah.
And you really get to help people at a kind of a crossroads part of their life. I always joke around with the guys like, you're at the perfect balance of having responsibility and no responsibility, and it goes
Yeah.
by very quickly. And soccer has given me so much in my life. And deep down inside, I just love helping. I love to, aid people in their growth. And, that's where college kind of comes into play, is being able to do that. So I feel very fortunate to be able to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah. It seems like in your career, as I kind of look back here, obviously you played at the college level. And it seems like pretty quickly you kind of made that decision of, yes, this is where I want to go. This is where my purpose is. And this is kind of the direction I want to go into with college coaching as well. Can you speak to maybe at all like that knowing that decision quite so early? Because I know a lot of players, myself included, is the perfect example. After I come out of college, I still like have that desire to keep playing, and I feel like that's where I need to. That's the platform that I need to have. So I know you played for a little bit, seeing with like the Brooklyn Italians and stuff. Was there still kind of that juggling act in your head of balancing playing and coaching and pursuing those at the same time?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So I was fortunate enough to play two different Division One schools, Central Connecticut State University, and then I finished up at Manhattan College. And again, being a undersized goalkeeper on a team that wasn't the best, I had a very modest, probably playing career. I was fortunate enough to play a little bit in some lower level semi-pro leagues, but right after. But I kind of knew that I wasn't going to be getting paid the big bucks to play. So I've been very fortunate. I grew up in a family full of teachers. My background's in physical education. I got into coaching at a young age. So even when I was in college, I got to coach at the LIJSL youth soccer camps and work at Long Island ODP, and got involved pretty early, and I fell in love with it. I caught that coaching bug, as they say. And what kind of really inspired me was I always thought I was going to go into being maybe a high school phys ed teacher and be a coach at that level. But when I was in Manhattan, we actually had a graduate assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a former player of our coach at the time. And, it was cool. Like, I enjoyed college athletics. It was a big part of my life. I loved the experience. And then, to think about maybe getting my master's paid for or part of it covered for, I thought was a cool experience. So, I started to do a little bit of research, and it's actually a pretty funny story how I was able to get my first job. I kind of knew early, like, all right, this is probably the route I want to go. So I started to reach out to schools that I knew had a master's I was interested in, and I was reaching out all over the place, blah blah blah. So it was my winter break. I'm at home, and I walk into a barber shop, and I'm sitting next to a friend of mine. I had my Manhattan soccer sweatshirt in, and this guy walks in. He sits right next to me, and he sees my sweatshirt. And he's like, "Hey, he said, you play at Manhattan?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, tell Mike Swanwick to give me a call or whatever." And he was our head coach at that time. And make a long story short, he ended up being the St. Peter's, which is funny because we're playing St. Peter's on Friday, the St. Peter's coach.
Yeah.
So we started shooting the breeze. We're chatting as we're getting our haircuts, blah blah. I explained, "Hey, I want to get into college coaching, yada yada yada." And he said, "Hey, I've got someone that I think you'd learn a lot from, and it's a really good place. The school's called Manhattanville College. They've got a really good graduate assistant package, and he's a great guy, great coach. I used to coach there. Reach out to him and see where it goes." And so I very quickly reached out. Make a long story short, I was in Coach Oriana's office a week or two doing an interview, and I ended up getting the assistant position there, and the rest is history. So it's funny because, like, you just never know. And I was just very fortunate that fate, was fortunate for me on that day. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I like I said, I think between my background, the love of the game, and kind of my calling, I knew I wanted to get into college athletics pretty early.
Yeah. And was it kind of a love at first sight when you arrive in Manhattanville and have that first season as that graduate assistant there? Because I know too, sometimes being a graduate assistant can be, a tough go. It's obviously super rewarding. You learn a lot, but, there's some programs where it can be tough sledding at that position, a lot of work and a lot of long hours. But was it something that you just kind of fell in love with right away?
Brennan, I loved it. I was like a fish to water, my man. Like, I jumped right in. I actually started a little bit early, like getting my feet wet, like the June or July before. So I actually, funny enough, I was kind of like a hybrid volunteer at the time, and I had to wait. They currently had a graduate assistant, so I really got immersed right away. And for me, I tell young coaches, experience is currency, right? So we talk about kind of like that 10,000 hour rule, I think, with the author Coyle with regards to was it the talent code. the culture code, so you really need to put your time into learning through the grind and through the struggle. And one of the cool parts when I was at Manhattanville is I was very fortunate to have an awesome mentor in Didier Oriana, who I still talk to on a very consistent basis. He let me do a lot. Being at a small school, you don't have every resource and every bells and whistle. You have to build a lot through, again, highlighting things and being creative. And we had a really great team, and I was very fortunate to also learn from the current GA at the time, who was awesome, taking me under the wing. So I had a really good experience, and it was a great first job because, like I said, I was able to kind of start from the bottom and learn through good people. I made tons of mistakes, as we all do, and I was fortunate to have a good mentor that, again, was patient with me and allowed me to grow,
Yeah.
and I'm very thankful for. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I loved it. The first season was great. We lost in the final. We were the regular season champion. We lost 1-0, like heartbreakingly, on our home field. But I loved it. I loved being on the road. I loved the practices. I didn't mind the office, and I kind of knew that it was a career that I wanted to make my own. So yeah.
And once you make that realization, are you starting to kind of formulate in your head kind of what your vision is for your career? Is it, all right, I kind of love this and I want to, be an assistant coach at the high level, or, I want to have my own program one day and kind of run it. Like, even I have to imagine, even in that first year, you're kind of maybe setting out the vision board a little bit of what the college career kind of is wanting to look like for you.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think straight from the get go, I knew I wanted to be a college coach. Like I loved college athletics. I loved the competition. Like I said before, I loved the mentoring piece of it. And it really just solidified. Like I went in maybe going, hey, maybe this is somewhere I could coach and learn, and then get my master's, then move on, going back into like the high school ranks. But like I was sold right there. I wanted to be a college coach. Everything was about and then you start to, as you get more involved, you start to see more things. You start to see different types of schools. You develop different relationships. Yeah, you start to think about, maybe someday what that might look for you running your own program. And my end goal was always to be a head coach. I'm currently an assistant right now, but again, I'd like to be a head coach again someday. So it's about, I think, a lot of times building up that currency, building up that experience, putting it in that experience jar for when you can use it at a later time, and then starting to develop what your coaching philosophy is going to be, what you want in terms of methodology, the type of school, who you're going to be in terms of a leader and mentor, and understand that it's a process and you're going to grow through it. And another mentor of mine once said, the job you have is going to set you up for your next job. So understanding how important it is in terms of lineage and being able to also work in the right kind of environment so that you can be ready when it's your time. So like I said, I've been very fortunate. I've had some really, really good mentors everywhere I've been. I've learned a lot through experience, and again, I'm always still continuing to learn and grow. So.
Yeah. And after that Manhattanville kind of initial introduction to the game, what's maybe something that you learned as you kind of transition into NJIT that was something new that you picked up in that role that maybe Manhattanville didn't quite teach you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think day-to-day operations are a little bit different, right? So you're going from a smaller D3 school now up to a Division 1 institution. So it's a different type of landscape in terms of recruiting, a different athlete and level of player. NJIT at the time was very unique because we were in a non-AQ conference. So we had like a 5-team conference called the Atlantic Soccer Conference, which didn't get a bid. And then the following year, we were an independent. So we were almost like the Harlem Globetrotters at the time, like bouncing around the country, playing all different teams. So being able
Mm-hmm.
to recruit players to be part of that vision and that kind of experience. And it's a unique school. It's a technological based school. So very heavy with engineering, architecture. So I think recruiting was a big part. So again, being able to recruit a different type of athlete. I don't want to use the word elite, but again, Division 1 caliber athlete. was
Mm-hmm.
different. Being at a very unique setting taught me again a lot about how to be able to sell in the right way, and then just being able to again learn under a different mentor. So again, I was under Didier Oriana, who ended up actually being the other assistant when we both transitioned to over to NJT. So that was good to have a support system and someone I knew. And then I worked for Cesar Markovic, who again is a legend in the game as well. So I got a chance to work and meet him there. And again, what you start to really get to see when you work for some great people is that everyone can be successful in so many different ways, and everyone does it differently. And I think that's a beautiful part of it. And it's not just how you play, your style of play, your system, but your day-to-day operations, the type of play you're looking for, personalities, how you man manage, things like that. So I always try and be a sponge, and I just really tried to take it all in from that experience.
Mm. And maybe you just spoke to it there about being a sponge, but I'm curious about, now at this point in your career, you've had experience as an assistant coach at a couple different levels. You've also been a head coach yourself. What are obviously maybe a silly question, but to ask just what the differences between assistant and head coach are. But I guess maybe to dive deeper into it, like what makes a really good assistant coach, or what makes a assistant coach that's going to add a lot of value to a coaching staff or to a program.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The main difference between being an assistant and being a head coach, and I'll keep it as simple as this, is as an assistant, you make suggestions. As a head coach, you make decisions. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think the one good part about where I'm at now is I've had the experience of being a head coach, and I was again head coach for 6 years. So I know being in the hot seat is not an easy thing because you're having to fulfill your vision. You're trying to manage tons of people to accomplish a goal or a task, right? And you have to do it with, again, a little bit of pressure, And so, being now assistant these past 2 years after being head coach, I feel like I have a little bit more perspective in how to maybe best help the coach, in terms of fulfilling his vision. But at the end of the day, I think being an assistant, your job is to fulfill the vision of the head coach, and then to be able to hopefully, through your strengths, be able to complement and be able to help where you can, right? And that can look different in different ways. I've been very fortunate. I've gotten to coach at all three divisions. I've pretty much done every job possible under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's given me a lot of perspective with trying to be a best of an assistant as I possibly can to meet the head coach's needs, right? And again, I think it's important to, important qualities as an assistant. First and foremost, loyalty and honesty. You have to be trustworthy. This is a people business, and as a head coach, right? We talked about you're already having to manage 25, 30, maybe even more. Again, young men that are growing and maturing. So you need to also be able to trust the people you work with. That's huge. You want guys that I think are going to give you different perspectives. So one important part is to always have the same common message and same common idea once you step out of the office. But I think it's okay to, again, if a head coach asks you for your opinion, to give him your honest opinion, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you may have a different perspective, whether it be something tactically, something in regards to training or recruit. And again, I think having different perspectives and different ways of looking at things will ultimately shape your program to be a little more open-minded and be successful. But again, I always just say most important things: trustworthy, loyalty, being open-minded, right? Going in with humility, and understanding the coach's vision, and just being bought into what that's about, and being able to help them as best as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, I know from my personal experience being an assistant coach, and I never had the perspective of being a head coach as well, but I feel like just kind of learning through my career as an assistant, towards the end, I kind of started to realize that while, yes, there are so many things that make being a head coach amazing, and like you said, it's that difference between suggestions and decisions, right? And while on the surface that is exciting, there's also a pretty big weight that comes with that as well, like because you're the one that's making every single one of those decisions. So if it's the wrong decision, then that means it's coming back on you. And I remember just kind of as working for different coaches, kind of having this feeling of like, man, it must be at certain times a little bit lonely, right? Because you have all these players who are kind of looking to you, and you're with the players, you're part of a group, but you're also a little bit separate, right? Because you have a different role. And even same thing with the assistant coaches. If you have a staff of 2 or 3 assistants, they kind of that's something that bonds them together. They have a bit of that camaraderie. And again, there's a little bit of separation between assistant and head coach because the head coach is, they hired you as an assistant. They're your boss, right? And so
Correct.
maybe there's a bit of that, connection between a head coach and other head coaches in the athletic department if they can build a relationship because they kind of go through the same struggles. But I just remember kind of reflecting on that and being like, yeah, it's great. You have that ability. It's your program. You're running the show. But what's the saying? It's like heavy is the crown or something like that. It
Yep,
comes with its
heavy's
fair share.
the head that wears the crown, right?
Exactly,
No,
exactly. Like, yeah,
no, it's true. I think lonely is a good word, right? Because there is so much expectation on you, right? Because you're the leader, you're the top of the pyramid in a lot of ways, right? So, um, players are always going to look for you for answers. Your assistant's going to look for you for answers, especially if they're a little bit younger. And I used to always tell people I loved being a head coach. I love being a coach in general. Um, but it sometimes is heartbreaking because you have like
mm,
all these young players who you love and care for, and at the end of the day, you can't make everyone happy. And that's the
yeah,
tough part about it because at the end of the day, all these guys who were elite athletes coming from whatever team they were from all over the world, they're coming to play for you in your program, and all they want to do, they were the star back where they came from, and now they can't all have the same role for your
yeah,
program to be successful. And it's that old saying, right? If you make everyone happy, you make yourself unhappy. I mean, I know I just botched that, but you can't
yeah,
like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah,
but it's tough, and that part I used to always struggle with internally is sometimes for you to do what's best for the group, you're going to unfortunately indirectly hurt the individual, because you have to do what's best for the group. Now, I think the important part always, Brendan, is to differentiate that. And I used to always say as a coach, I'm not going to be able to treat everyone the same way or fairly as a player, but I will promise you, I'll try and treat you every single person, player 1 through 30, the same as an individual. So it's about having
mm,
that mutual rapport and mutual relationship and building that bridge and that foundation. That's extremely important. And players need to unfortunately differentiate the difference sometimes, and that can be
yeah,
a little frustrating sometimes with players because they just want to play and they want to show you. But as long as the player knows that you care about them as a person and you'll again do whatever it takes to give them as best as possible the right type of student athlete experience, that's the most important thing. Um, and again, like the toughest part, like I said, I always struggled with was just you want everyone to get maximum playing time. You want to win all the games. If you have scholarship money, you want to give everyone scholarship money. But the unfortunate reality, that's not realistic, and um, you have to do what's best for the program. And that, at the end of the day, is the job of the head coach is to run a successful program, create a really good student athlete environment and culture. Um, but again, do what's best for the family, right? So the head coach is the dad, the assistant coaches are the uncles, and then you have however many children and brothers on your team. So
yeah. Yeah, I'm so happy that you spoke to that about that difference between, kind of player and person, because I do think a really good coach has to make a little bit of that distinction. And, it's again, as kind of the years have gone on for me, it's definitely something I've gained more perspective on in that even at the time, when I was playing, you would hear a lot of times players say like, "Oh yeah, the coach just hates me," or "The coach doesn't like me," and you kind of hear those same kind of rumors even when you're on the assistant side. It's like all these players think, "Oh yeah, the coach just hated me my whole 4 years," and it's like the more you kind of gain perspective, and you meet these coaches, you speak to these coaches, it's like 99% of the coaches are never actually going to say, "Oh yeah, I hated a kid." Like that's just it's a bit insane to actually like think that. They're like you said, they're trying to do what's best for their program, which is their job at the end of the day. It's their career, so there's pressure on them to make sure that they're doing the best week in and week out, and part of that is choosing the right players and making sure that everything is running in order on and off the field. And it's very rarely is it ever picking out a kid and saying, I don't like that kid, so I'm not going to play him. And
Correct.
it's usually so much bigger than that. But again, we tie this back to the very beginning when we say kind of the job relies on, the decision making of 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And we all know, even ourselves at that age, we're emotional. We don't always think through things completely rationally from start to finish.
Yeah.
So for us, when
Yeah.
we're not playing, it's very much easier for us to just say, "Oh, the coach hates me," instead of actually thinking a little bit more critically about what could maybe be going on. But I mean, I'm sure you have, stories of maybe that, not to that extent, but maybe feeling a bit of that tension between a player where you are trying to do what's best for that player and that person. But like you said, it's unfortunately not going to mean every single player that comes to your program is going to start from minute one to the time that they graduate. And also we're going to win and all the things are going to happen.
Correct. Growth always comes through challenge and conflict too, right? So our jobs as
Yeah.
coaches is to coach, right? And that means some critical feedback. That means pushing players sometimes to places that we know that they're capable of being, and putting them in comfortable environments and situations. All right, and obviously we're not talking about things that are unsafe, but we're talking more about getting players to maximize who they are as people and as players. And I think the important part's the conversation you have, and that's why I think the it always goes back to your foundation with that player, right?
Mm.
Players most times are motivated by three things. Okay, so again, autonomy. They want to feel some sort of ownership. Mastery. They want to feel competence, and they want to feel like they're growing through master attack. And connectivity. And connectivity is a huge one. So connectivity to individuals. So having good relationships with you as a coach, with their teammates, but also connection to something that's bigger than themselves, right? So having a deep rooted vision of what they want to accomplish and who they are in terms of helping us accomplish that goal, right? And I think it's important for us as coaches is to be able to consistently be able to connect with our players regarding again what their role is, having a continuous feedback loop, and just being honest and transparent through everything, right? And as we said, like we're doing this, you may not like it, player A, we need you to improve on your left foot. It's not that I don't like you. It's because I'm giving you this critique because I want you to become a better player. And these are the
Yeah.
things, action plans through that you can accomplish getting better at your left foot and being able to work with them and giving some autonomy and some ownership through the development process and doing it. And I think a lot of times too, players unfortunately internalize feedback in the wrong way. They take it personally with regards to um, they almost internalize an action as you being negative towards them as a character, if that makes sense, right? So I think it's important that your message and your verbiage is very clear, right? So if you're trying to make a critical point about a certain action that you see on the field, that it doesn't come off like you're being um, negative towards that person and you're again attacking their character, who they are as a person, and so forth.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important. That can get lost in translation very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You speak to that connectivity point, and I think it's a really important point to bring up because I think, again, even with that, there is a slight difference in the connectivity that you can have or the connection you can build as an assistant with your players and the head coach with your players. Just because, again, that when that decision making factor is kind of taken out of the assistant coach, it's almost like they feel. I don't know. Maybe the assistant coach can be a bit more, I wouldn't want to say honest or transparent, but again, it's like they know that as they build that relationship with the player, they're not the ones that are actually going to make the decision whether or not to play them, on the weekend or on the
Correct.
Wednesday when the game comes up. And maybe that's one thing where you can kind of point out a difference. But when you arrived at St. Rose, do you remember ever having a moment or feeling like kind of maybe in that first year, even like, oh wow, like I'm head coach now. This is different. Like this is a whole different ball game. Like maybe it's a decision you had to make, or just I have to imagine there's a bit of a jump when it comes to that. It's your name on the door.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, and I think I'll go back because I want to touch upon something you said regarding the your role as an assistant. I think the important part, right, is you're always going to have a different relationship with the players as an assistant, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, sometimes unfortunately the head coach is viewed as the quote unquote bad guy because you
Yeah,
know they have to make a certain decision that's best for the team, and maybe it's
yeah,
not in the selfish interest or best interest for whatever player, And as an assistant, yeah, maybe they don't view you um, in the same light because you're not making the decision, right? So your relationship
mm-hmm.
is going to be a little bit different. I think an important part as an assistant, though, is even though you're going to have a different voice, the message always has to be consistent, right? So again, the head coach says something. It's very easy for a player to come up to you and say, coach, why are we doing this? Or why do we play this way or this? And it's very easy for if you take the bait or if you even unconscientiously say something the wrong way, that they can now take that information and run with it and almost say,
Yeah,
well, so and so assistant coach
yeah.
said something differently,
Said
and
something
and
different.
that and
Yeah,
that's bad,
exactly.
and that's not a good
Yeah.
environment that you want to create, and that's why it's so important that you're again biggest things: loyalty, trust, honesty. The experience part will come, but you need good people around you. Now go back to your other question. One of the I think the you go in. I was an assistant at Siena. I went into being a head coach, and I you think you know how you want to play, you think you know how you want to coach, and then you get in it and you realize, wow, um, I have to be a lot better in terms of my communication, or I have to be a lot better with how I give feedback and being more specific. And I think one of the things that I matured in, and one of the things I think I got better at, is being a lot more intentional and specific with about really all aspects of the program, but who we are in terms of our DNA, our ethos, our identity as a program, and being able to be a little bit more intentional about how to explain it. So,
Mm,
okay, we always wanted to be like a possession team and, build out the back and do all these things. But, how could I be more specific with giving the roles and responsibilities within each position within it? Or how to be more specific about even who we were off the field. Like I was I had my non-negotiables in terms of what our program was and our culture and all these things. And I think it was a big driving force in us being able to change the program and turn it into, a winning one, but being a lot more intentional with the chemistry piece, being a lot more intentional with the wording, the messages, our behavior. At the end of the day, too, like the on-field stuff, soccer is a problem-solving, decision-making sport, right? It's a chaotic sport. It's an unpredictable sport. You have to be able to collaborate. You have to be able to work together, but you have to be able to make good decisions. And sometimes, like our job as a coach is to take that chaos and to give it some structure.
mm,
And I think my first year or two, I didn't do the best of jobs. And as I got a little bit older and again learned more, and again also started to probably bring in more players that understood what our message was through the recruitment process, it started to get better. But I think again, communication is a huge piece, and I think that's one thing coaches. I think you're always learning, you're always growing, you always got to be a sponge. But like one thing I know, like I've tried to always get better about was the communication part, um, and I learned, a very hard way my first couple of years through trial by fire. So
yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's kind of the answer to my next question here when it comes to your evolution as a communicator at that role. But you know, I think it would be fascinating for people to understand kind of what it takes to, let's say, maybe revitalize or it kind of inject some life like you did into a program like St. Rose, because I know I know the type of guy that you are, and you would never make an excuse of anything like this. But I think people don't understand that there's certain times where you come into a role like that at a Division II college soccer program or other programs around the country, and at first you're a part-time coach, right? And so you have to go out and coach multiple club teams and kind of do all these things just to make, keep the roof over your head from a personal perspective, to then also give back your best to the program that you're coaching. And I don't know if people, and especially players, maybe don't understand quite the toll that takes on a coach to be able to kind of grind day in and day out to make this program what it was. As you look back at maybe personally and also just your professional window there at St. Rose, like, what are some of the things that you point to along with that communication evolution piece that really kind of, I mean, the stats, I guess, speak for itself in terms of what you did there, right? Like, bringing that team to a final, never had been done before, a conference final. Like, I believe the highest, if I'm not mistaken, season with the highest wins like ever a coach at that program. Like, those speak for themselves, but a lot of people don't know where it started and what it took to get to that point where, from the outside, a program looks successful.
Yeah, no, yeah, no. So, one, I think looking back, I think it's always important to um, give credit and honor your predecessors. So, I took over a program from two previous coaches, Steve Hogan and Matt Jones, who, again, I think did a really good job of taking the program from the next step, making relevant, taking him to a couple of postseasons. Again, traditionally, the program was not the strongest, didn't have the strongest tradition in terms of winning on the men's side. When I applied, I kind of thought, well, the women's program is really successful. Why couldn't the guys do it? So I think
How hard could it
having a
be?
strong vision. What's up?
I said, how hard could it be, right?
How hard could it be? No, no. I definitely went in. I tried to do my research. Being in Siena for 3 years before, I think you meet a lot of people. It's as you know, the Albany area. It's state capital. It's the soccer community is pretty small and tight knit, so you get to meet a lot of
Yeah.
people and seen them play before. So I knew again that it was a program that had a lot of talent, and again, credit to the previous coaches. But you have your vision on what you want the program to be, and we played in the Northeast 10 conference, which is a top four conference in the country. So it's definitely not an easy task, but I think one, you have to have a strong conviction and a strong vision on what you want, not just on the field, but off the field. So building a strong culture is really important. So one of the things we tried to do right away was kind of change the mindset. You know, like I used to talk to the guys about, don't envision who you are now, envision who you want to be. And then your behaviors and actions on a daily basis have to reflect that. So we changed some training habits, some off-season things. We put some standards in play that I thought were important, even things down to how we dressed, like all these things that I thought would create a championship culture or mindset. We talked a lot about having a growth mindset and getting good at the fundamentals, right? So getting good at the basics and being really good about who we were with our identity, and as I kind of alluded to, as I got more advanced, that became a lot more distinct, and I was be able to, what's the right word? Be able to express a lot easier. But we tried to set high standards of excellence, both on and off the field, in the classroom, who we were as people in the community, and tried to, again, behave in that direction. Other things that, again, I thought were important were standing by your non-negotiables, right? So I started to, big thing for me was the culture piece and having certain things that were about our team chemistry that I wasn't going to bend on, and I had to be very firm in terms of changing some things disciplinary wise and other things. And I think it helped in terms of creating some good team unity. And then just finding people that want to be part of the vision, right? So whether that was assistant coaches, right? Again, as you kind of allude to, part of my, like, I didn't, even though it was, we all know whether you're a volunteer or you're full-time, you're always full-time as a college coach, but I wasn't full-time until 2019. So I started
Yeah.
as a college coach in 2009. So I wasn't at the time, a high paid guy. My assistants were getting breadcrumbs, in terms of money. So finding guys that want to, again, get their currency through experience, and being in a program where we're looking to build something, and guys that wanted to grind and be gritty
Yeah.
and learn all the things that went into be a college coach. So you need people that were going to be good people they're going to be loyal. They're going to work hard, fulfill your vision. People I could help, hopefully, that want to move on to be a coach somewhere else. And then also the recruiting part, finding what works for you. I'm a firm believer, not every player is going to be the right fit for your program, for you as a
Mm.
coach, for your playing style, for your school, and finding the right kind of guys and the right fit. Like you had JP, one of my guys, and I
Yeah.
think I wrote to you. He was one of the key guys that helped us transform the program. His positivity, not just his talent on the field, but his positivity, his leadership, his ability to get people to be bought in and to influence people in all facets. Huge. I had another captain my first couple of years named Carlos Menivar, another guy that was instrumental. He was a Dowling transfer, came in. Justin Verbraska, again early on helped out a lot, and many others, And then I was very fortunate to have a lot of really good captains and leaders as we went on. So you got to surround yourself with good people that are bought into you, bought into your vision, and being bought into also giving ownership back to the players. And that's something I think also I grew into as a coach was, I think you first come in as a young head coach and you want to prove yourself and blah, blah, blah. And then you realize, you know what, like it's not about you. It's about the guys. So giving them more ownership, having your negotiables when it comes to certain things with regards to your standards, expectations, and giving them things to grow upon, without losing your identity and losing who you are, and keeping your framework. And that's it. There's a couple other ingredients that go in there, but
Yeah.
again, it's never one big thing. It's always small little ingredients or small little building blocks that equal or they go into the building itself, right? So, um, and then from yourself, you just got to work hard. You got to, again, be the role model that you want for your players. So I always wanted to be a hardworking, kind, fair guy, and bring passion and bring some of those things. And I wanted that from my guys, and so away you go, and hopefully you get some results and get some buy-in, and like I said, you become a little bit more deliberate with how you go about the process. So
Yeah. Yeah, and you definitely speak to how important it is to build that kind of community around you, both on the sideline with the coaching staff and with the players as well. And yeah, I was just about to bring up JP as well. Like it's funny. Maybe even earlier in the interview, maybe it was within the hour though. It's like it's quite clear why you would go and recruit somebody like JP to be part of your program, right? Like you speak to him for an hour and you're like, yeah. I mean, you take away the kind of ability wise for a second. Obviously, he's a super talented player, but having somebody like that, in your dressing room week in and week out, like representing your program is something that's only going to provide value to that program and add the value and kind of raise the tide of the group, right? So I have to imagine that regardless of where you are in terms of your coaching career, Siena, St. Rose, St. John's, like things might change in terms of what a head coach wants or what you want for the on the field play style, things of that nature. But I have to imagine that certain of those kind of intangible things, like the leadership, the positive attitude that they bring to the job, so to speak, day in and day out, I have to imagine those things kind of ring true regardless of whatever program you're at in terms of who you look for in recruiting. No.
yeah, for sure. So JP, a couple of the other guys I mentioned. We used to use a phrase. So when and I got this from one of my mentors. So shout out to Caesar Markovich. So I don't want to copyright infringe this one, but I used to say to recruits when they come on campus here at St. Rose, we want guys that are soccer players, not guys that play soccer, right?
Mm,
So we want guys that are soccer players, not guys that play soccer. So we want part of change that mindset was finding guys that wanted to live, breathe, and love the game. And that was a
mm,
big part of our framework was we wanted guys that had a growth mindset, guys that were humble, guys that were going to be gritty and work hard, and guys that want to be part of the process, and that really helped with being helping us being able to elevate our program. So JP was the kind of guy that really immersed himself with the professionalism piece, obviously a great leader, great influencer, but also was a great leader of himself, and was a good role model for other people. And we wanted people that, again, at the end of the day, wanted to be at St. Rose, wanted to win championships, wanted to have a really good experience. But again, we're about the game and wanted to, again, be about their education and be about the right things. So I think some of the characteristics you find from players that are really successful is that they have a certain focus and single mindedness to be really good at their craft. Guys that I've coached on that have really good college careers, or guys that I've coached that have gone on into the professional ranks. Again, the proof's in the pudding. There's no Michael Jordan special drink from Space Jam. You gotta work hard. You gotta be
yeah.
disciplined. You gotta be committed. You gotta be focused. Right. Again, I think part of your training it's not a large telescope. It's a fine microscope, and you need to be very specific, especially as you get older, on fine tuning certain things. Right. Whether that's a
Mm,
functional technique, whether that's a specific part of your game from a physical aspect, whether it's something tactical. You need to be able to develop your own IDP plan or have your own action steps. And the guys that I've seen that have really taken the next step, it's not always the guys who are the most talented, but it's the guys that really do the work in the off season to maximize who they are. And they're very serious about their diet, about their mindset, about doing the little things that are going to give them the 10% advantage over the guy who's next to them. Because you and I both know, and again, you've been in the pro ranks, you've been at good college levels, it really starts to teeter out, and the guys who are really special, it's up here, right? It's the lifestyle.
yeah.
I used to always use a phrase, lifestyles. It's not a light switch. It's you want to be a leader. It's a full on 24/7 thing. You want to
Yeah.
be a good player. It's not a light switch, right? It's not. It's
Yep.
not. Oh, I'm going to be really good today and not good tomorrow, or I'm going to be a good leader on game day, but in the classroom I'm act like a jerk. It's got to be a full 24/7 thing. You got to live and breathe it. Um, so again, like I kind of use that phrase, we want soccer players, not guys that play soccer. You want to get rid of the part timeness. You need to be full time to be good in anything that you want to do. So guys like JP, other guys I've coached, for me, that's been the biggest piece is the character part to be able to differentiate themselves from others through their training habits, diet, mindset, extra work they do, and those intangibles. Really, at the end of the day, is what carries them to get to that next step.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. JP and I had a very similar kind of part in the conversation where we talked about how, you know, I look back and I'm like, there's been so many more players that have been so much more talented than me that have should have gone on to do, the things I've done, if not more. And it's just, you kind of start to realize like, oh yeah, it's just because I have, I mean, to a very, very simplified degree, I just haven't given up essentially. And he kind of said the same thing as well, like in this career, whether it's coaching or whether it's playing, you're going to be faced with so many times where you're told no, or so many times where the road is so difficult that a lot of other people would go and choose a slightly less bumpy path. And if you continue to just go down the path, eventually good things will start to happen to you. If you also combine it with all those good things that you kind of said, that handle yourself in the right way as a professional. I'm curious as like how let's say I'm a young player, right? And I'm actually kind of trying to get to that point of being in a program like you're speaking about, where it's going to kind of rise me up as a player and bring me to the levels that I want to. I know it's different for each player, right? So it's hard to give a blanket advice to any young player out there. But what are some of the things, as someone who's spoken to thousands of players, I imagine, kind of on the recruiting trail, what are some things that a player should look for when deciding where to go to college, or where to go and become a college soccer player?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and the tough part is it's a very fickle process, right? So doors are open, they'll close, the window over here will open, and then
Yeah,
and no two processes are the same. So like the first word of advice I always give kids is don't worry about what your friend's doing, don't worry about this
mm,
person. Your process is your process, and I think that's extremely important because in this day and age with social media and this and that it's very easy to get caught up into caring too much about what other people are doing. So, worry about you. Um, Invest in the process, right? So, I think it's important to understand that your college selection is almost like putting together a puzzle. And each puzzle piece is a different aspect of what your college choice is going to be. And hopefully at the end of the day, it's got that nice logo for whatever school you're going to go to. So one puzzle piece is the soccer part, right? So is this school really recruiting me, right? You want to go somewhere where the coach wants you and not
yeah,
just wants you, but there's a vision and a plan for you. So I think that it's important to be able to ask some good, transparent questions, right? Um, are I don't think any coach or most coaches aren't going to tell you, okay, yeah, you're definitely going to start from day one, this or that. But it's important to know kind of where you stand and what the vision is for you. Okay. Do you factor me in being part from day one? Is this going to be more of a long-term process? Um, what are the plans in place to help me get where I need to go as a player, but where I can help you, with the program. So I
mm,
think that's part's important. Um, be able to want to go there as well, right? So I think it's a two-way street. I've seen it where, coach really wants a player, player doesn't really want to go to that school, or vice
yeah,
versa. Player really wants to go to that school, coach doesn't really want them. It doesn't work out. And again, the transfer portal. It's got thousands and thousands of kids who want a different type of experience, right? So I think part of it is asking good questions, being transparent on both sides. I think is really important, um, and just having the right fit, right? So I always tell kids, you only get so much time here, right? You only get so much time to get to play college soccer. It doesn't have to be the school you see on ESPN. It doesn't have to be the school your best friends go to. I've been very fortunate, like I said, to coach at all three divisions. There are some awesome D3 schools where talent-wise, they could probably beat a lot of D1s and D2s. They have better facilities. You may get a better financial aid package. If you want to go professional, if you're good enough, my philosophy is you're good enough, right? Someone is going to find you. It's a great pathway, right? So D2, same thing, D1, junior college, NAI, there's so many different options. Go somewhere where it's the right fit. It fits your playing style, right? So do your homework. Go watch a game. If you can't watch in person, go to, watch them on, not see it TV, but a streaming service, right? There's so many ways that you can do your homework and you need to invest in that process.
yeah,
Next part, academics, right? Make sure, again, that puzzle piece, it's got what you want to study, okay? And it's got a track and a track record to set you up for success the rest of your career, or the rest of your life,
mm,
I should say. Socially, is the type of college you want to go to, right type of campus, the size, urban, rural, all these different types of things, private versus public. Is it affordable, right? This day, schools are only getting more and more expensive,
yeah,
both public and private. So can your family afford it? And again, all these different things are puzzle pieces and they need to all fit together. So
mm,
no one school is going to be right fit for everyone. Like, again, um, I used to always say, again, when kids would come in and for recruiting visits, that St. Rose isn't for everybody. Like I was very honest about who we were, what we wanted. what we had to offer them in terms of resources, facilities, and understand what you're coming into and the expectations and standards. Same thing. You're going to any school. There's going to be certain standards, expectations, and they'll be different. But that's the beautiful part of college soccer and just colleges in general is we just have so many different options. Other parts that I would give in terms of recommendation for players, invest in your process. There's just so many players trying to play. Again, you have not just your local club team, you have all the different levels of the landscape, MLS Next, ECNL, Elite 64, EDP, all these things. You have junior college, you have prep schools, you have the international game, grad students, the transfer portal. You have to be proactive. You have to reach out to colleges. You have to be okay, like you said, with people saying no to you. You have to stand out. Those are really, really important. You have to have good people in your corner. People are going to give you transparent and honest feedback, right? I think it's really important. And I think a lot of coaches out there do their players an injustice by not being honest with them, right? And not being honest with their skill set. And I'm not saying in a negative, like super negative way, but they don't give them enough critical feedback to be able to help them grow. And again, growth comes in the uncomfortable zone. So you need, again, mentors and people that are going to really be honest with you and help you where you need to go. And then I always tell guys, put yourself in the best scenario you possibly can from a playing standpoint. You're going a lot of times from being an 18-year-old playing with other 18-year-olds. I think one thing that we don't do a good enough job in this country, and they do better overseas, is having younger players play with senior level players. And it is changing. Like you're starting to see a lot of MLS clubs, their academies, their U19s don't play in the MLS Next anymore, but they'll play in UPSL, which is a senior level. So they gain that senior level experience. But put yourself in situations where you play with players that are bigger, faster, and stronger than you. Players that have a different type of mindset, that have different experiences, different fly. Like I'm sure the guys you've played with that are older, like I always tell guys, even when they come into our program, like you'll learn just as much from the older guys in the team as you will from me. And they can teach you certain things, from their experiences, or guys that play the same position you, they have a little bit of a trick of the trade. So it's really important that you're setting yourself up for the experience, which is you're playing with guys sometimes as old as 24, 25 and older when you get to college. So it's important to kind of get yourself in that kind of setting as early as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's great advice. Like to look at it as a very holistic picture, and it can't just be. I think that is sometimes I notice when I speak to players, it's like they're just so focused on the soccer piece, and they're so focused on like, is this the big flashy program, or is this the right coach for me? And like there are just so many factors that go into it, and there are so many factors that kind of change, and as you said, evolve throughout your recruiting process. A door opens and then all of a sudden it closes, and then the window opens and then it closes, right? And those things can look a lot of different ways. It could be the assistant coach that was really recruiting you. Oh, now they go and they get a different role and they're not the ones there anymore. So you have to start the process over, or, head coach leaves or something like that. They have a different player that comes in at your position. Like I would say, I think perfect advice that you gave in terms of looking at it as the puzzle, but also understand that it's a puzzle that sometimes once you feel like you have a piece in place, it may still change leading up until that time once you actually arrive at school and start the process. So also be aware that like whatever the picture is on the box, it's not already set. It's going to probably evolve by the time you actually get into your 4-year college program.
Well, and then do you mind if I add something else, Brennan?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think, and another important part, I think a lot of times kids think, this my dream school or the school I'm going to is going to be perfect, and it's not perfect, right? You're going to have, and then go back to you need to almost do a little bit of homework, get a piece of paper, pros and cons, or negotiables and non-negotiables, and say, okay, these are the things that I really need in my college or my student athlete experience. These are things that I can grow with, right? Because no school's perfect. So you need to prioritize what's important for you. And that is different for every person. And the only person that really knows that is really the player themselves and hopefully the parents and the family. And it's just, again, not to go on a soapbox, but it's disheartening sometimes when you have such a high rate of of kids going to the transfer portal, and
Yeah.
it's okay to fail. It's okay to not be the best right away. It's okay to have a little bit of adversity. Like again, the day and age of like I used to joke around like, okay, again, I was a goalkeeper. I'm the backup goalkeeper. Okay, I go to the coach. Okay, John, these are the things you need to get better at. These are the things you need to improve upon if you want to be a starter. And then you would go home and you talk to your parents, and your parents would say, okay, well then go down to the park and go practice. It's so you can get better. And then through that adversity and through that development process, you gain a little bit of gratification through having to overcome the obstacles, and it
Hmm.
vaults you to becoming a better player and a better human being. And I just find a lot of times nowadays you have a lot of kids that, like I said, make the wrong choice because they're not prioritizing the right things. And then when adversity strikes, they're too quick to jump ship. Whereas that golden nugget of that experience that's going to help them become a stronger, more mentally tough, and what's the right word? More holistic, maybe person down the road is waiting there for them. And again,
Yeah.
not every situation I transferred, so I'd be the biggest hypocrite, right? But at the end of the day, just understand that it's not going to always be perfect. Okay, from a playing
Yeah.
standpoint and from a school standpoint, yes. And there's certain reasons why you transfer and you need to transfer, and that's good too. But just it's a process, and people just I think sometimes need to be a little more patient with understanding that adversity sometimes is a good thing. Things not being perfect is okay. Not getting things right is okay, at least right off the bat, and it'll help you grow as a person. So
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm the same way. I transferred as well, so I understand that there are certain situations where that there is value in that. But like you said, I think just statistically based on what you see of the transfer portal now and how many people are entering each year, it's it's I don't know if alarming is the right word, but yeah, it seems like there's just so many players that go to a situation and are unhappy and so quickly, right? Instead of maybe giving it another chance of another season or another year, they're quick to, all right, let me go find like the next program. And then sometimes, unfortunately you get guys who finish their college career and they've gone to, maybe three or four schools and not necessarily three or four schools all for the right reasons of a transfer, right? Like you spoke about there. There are some times where it is the right reason to change your mind and go somewhere else. But there's also times where it's like it might actually be more rewarding if you kind of stuck it out in here and then you know, had that success come your junior or senior year.
correct. And again, and that's the tough part is that everyone's journey is different, and it's whether it's playing, coaching, you gotta respect the path. And at the end of the day, I think you just want what's best for the kid too, right?
Yeah.
So again, if a kid's not happy, you want to respect that, and you want them to again have the right kind of student athlete experience, right? So as you said, there's always a variety of different reasons why players transfer, but I think doing your research, doing your homework, investing in kind of the forefront of the process sometimes will do a world of good once you get to your destination for sure.
Yeah. And you're just speaking there to the different journey and different path that everyone's on in terms of playing and coaching or really any kind of walk of life. Like it's something that I really have loved about doing this podcast is I can gain a lot of inspiration from people's story and understanding that no two paths are the same. And there's kind of motivation or inspiration, as I said, that I can take from everyone's story. And what I really have kind of liked to have started to add to some of the more recent episodes is as we look at maybe your coaching career, right, there's been a number of different chapters that have been written in your coaching story of being an assistant coach, kind of getting your start, being a head coach for the first time, taking that program to new heights, now being an assistant, now being in the Big Apple and doing things with St. John's. Like there's been and within those chapters, so many different, kind of little subplots, I guess, if you will, and so many smaller stories that make the book. But I guess I like to ask people, if you kind of had to think about maybe some of the chapters you've written so far, and maybe what chapter you're in right now, kind of, I guess, in the sense of maybe what chapter do you feel like you're in right now? What chapters are you looking forward to writing? And maybe at the end of the book, what do you want people to say about that book?
Oof, that's very deep. That's a good one, Brenna. I like that. I like the chapters and oof. No, I think it's a good point. I think one of the important parts is just staying very humble and staying very open minded. A big part for me always is learning and having a growth mindset, and trying to take little tidbits. I think one of the cool parts when you're just coaching in general, but especially when you're an assistant, right, is that you are learning under different mentors and people that are more experienced than you, and you try and take away things that you really like that you can apply to your coaching philosophy and how you want to go about things. Hopefully, when like I said, you're in the big chair again.
Mm,
So I think for me right now, this chapter, again, I was a head coach. I was very humbled and blessed to be at St. Rose. They gave me a wonderful opportunity. I was very fortunate to coach some amazing student athletes and have a really good experience. And to be honest, leaving was it's probably one of the toughest decisions of my life. And it was not easy. I'm super happy for the program. Steve Wazorek, who took over for me, has done a great job, and they're doing really, really well. And for me, this chapter that I've stepped into was very intentional. I wanted to be a little bit closer to family and be able to kind of step back to take a step forward in a lot of ways.
mm,
Not just personally, but also professionally. So I got to a point at St. Rose where, again, I felt a little burnt out and I wasn't maybe maximizing the coach that I wanted to be. And, mentally, emotionally, physically, so I thought coming home would be a good refresher, and again, my end goal again is to be a head coach someday. So, I was very fortunate that Stony Brook opened up, which again, great Division I school. I knew the assistant, and I was fortunate enough to apply and get the assistant job there. And it was a good experience for learning, and I wanted to use this time to be an assistant to become a better coach and to learn and to grow. And not that I felt like I was stagnating, but again, you can always learn through convention or doing courses or, reading books, seeing something on YouTube, but you really can't put a price tag on being in the office on a daily basis with people who know more than you, that are more experienced. So, I was
mm,
very fortunate to be at Stony Brook. Again, big state school. I've never worked in that kind of environment. CAA conference. Again, it's a top 10 league in the country. I worked with, again, Ryan Antle, fantastic coach, great person, was able to learn a lot from him. And then Carl Still Sid, who I knew for a while, the other assistant, awesome coach, great person. Just to learn was fantastic. And then I was very fortunate when I'm very humbled that, Coach Mazer reached out and said that they had a vacancy in their program. And then felt like working for one of the winningest coaches in Division I history and such a storied program, St. John's, and being in the Big East, and then Coach Janasic, the associate coach who I've known for a while, is fantastic. That was an opportunity I probably couldn't pass on, and learning in that environment has really shaped me as well. So, and I've learned so much in such a short period of time. So this, to kind of put in a nutshell, because I was very long winded, was this is a not a rebirth, but again, you're taking a step back to work on yourself to then hopefully become a better version of yourself later on. So been very fortunate, as I said, to have a good support system, being back on Long Island around family,
mm,
and be around some great mentors and great people. Some the kids on both teams have been fantastic, and that's important, So again, this chapter hopefully is to grow as a coach, help out, the best of my ability with the program that I'm at, and yeah, and then hopefully if the day comes, become a better head coach. When the time is ready. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I like that idea of, like you said, it's not necessarily a step back, but I do think that's important sometimes where you feel outgrown maybe isn't the right word, but maybe burnt out, like you said, it could be a little bit of the right word where you just you know that the head coaching is a bit of a grind, especially also being away from family too. It's sometimes it's just that breath of fresh air that you need to come back and be around the support system again, and then it kind of gives you that rejuvenated energy to go back and hit the ground running just as hard as you were before. But I definitely look forward to seeing kind of the future chapters that are being written and watch your coaching career. It was awesome to see you get this role at St. John's. I'm sure it was, like you said, for you as well, an opportunity that you couldn't pass up, and that it feels like a pretty cool opportunity to be a part of now. So I'm looking forward to seeing the chapters written as well.
well, thank you, Brendan. Again, I appreciate everything. Like I said, big fan. I know we've crossed paths and. Again, when you were a player, and then again the coaching world. Again, I think what you're doing is great, giving this platform and this voice to again a variety of different coaches and players at different levels, and I think it's important. I think sharing is important. I don't think sometimes we do enough of it. In terms of being able to share ideals and ways of looking at the game, and being able to again hear people's journeys does inspire and does. Help a lot of people, in terms of their own journey. So again, thank you again for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much, man. Thank you. That's it for this week's episode. I'll keep it nice and short and sweet here on the outro. Thank you so much to John for stepping in to the 11 this week and sharing his story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you out there who are watching and who are listening. Make sure if you are watching or if you are listening that you head over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow, helps the episodes and the podcast grow so we can keep pumping out awesome episodes like this one and like more that are coming. A couple more that will be here in Australia, and then look out for a couple that will be back stateside. But that's it for me for this week, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.